Good morning. This is the weekly VOLTHA TST meeting, and it is being recorded and will be uploaded onto the YouTube channel for posterity. Okay, let's see. So if anybody has any announcements or updates or items to add on the agenda, feel free to put them in. Somebody added an item to review the current major bugs list and potential roadmap items. Is whomever added it on the call, or do you have URLs? Well, we've got the VOLTHA roadmap up here if we want to go over that. Whatever you would like to cover with this item.
Actually, I didn't edit. I don't know who edited it. But first of all, we need to, cover up this test situation, and the release time is coming, and we need to make this test pass. Then it's good also to go over all this open task bugs. But first, let's talk about this test on Berlin pods. What is the state there? Jan, do you have an update for us?
So as far as I know, the issue still is that the ONU is not in the correct state after the provisioning. So, I mean, there is like an open merge request, which is a work in progress one, I guess, from you. I don't know if that needs to be merged first to move this forward. But the testing pipeline itself, so at least the TT one on the hardware is currently not working because, I mean, the error message basically say it, right? So they point out the part where it's not in the, what is it, provision something state, but it's received something, but not the MIB part. So yeah, I guess this is the current status.
So when checking the results of the Jenkins jobs, I see a lot of different errors and not sure which one is the first error that initiated all these job failures. So could you please, you or Christina, point out the exact place where this test is failed? Which one is the main reason?
So the issue right now is that in the functional tests, basically the first failure says something like device SCOM blah 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 MIB state incorrect, initial MIB downloaded, values false, and then it says that the state that it currently has, so this OMCI flows pushed ONU re-enabled, does not contain initial MIB downloaded. So it seems that after the provisioning, so after the rebooting, basically, that's the first thing that happens, and where it says pass, the ONU comes back, and within the VOLTHA outputs, when it tries to look at the status of the ONUs, the ONU does not have this initial MIB downloaded state, but instead it has OMCI flows pushed and ONU re-enabled.
That's really interesting. Isn't it the first test, the reboot test?
The first test is rebooting, right? So if you look at the, like, if you go to the, I don't know, test run 134, for example, and then you look at the functional tests, then you see the first part is, so the functional tests are basically those parts that try to verify that at least the basics are working, right? So it's like pinging a bit and like stuff like that. So the first part here in this functional test is rebooting the ONUs and the OLTs. There's a bunch of conditions wrapped around that sometimes lead to not actually doing that. For example, it says skipping OLT's power switch reboot, probably because the OLT already was in the expected state or something. This is all a bit, yeah, it's not necessarily always working. It's just the way how it is written, basically. So it skips the OLT reboot part, but it probably still rebooted the ONUs. Because it didn't say it skipped that. And then the next part is it tries to check the state. So during the initialization of this second task, the sanity end-to-end test for TT, this HSIA, VOT, VoIP stuff, it goes through certain verification parameters of trying to figure out if the ONUs are in the right state, if the OLTs are in the right state, and all this stuff. And during the verification of the ONUs, it checks VOLTHA device list, I think is the command. I have to check that again. And then it tries to see if the ONUs actually report this initial MIP downloaded. And apparently the ONU does not have initial MIP downloaded here, but it only says OMCI flows pushed and ONU re-enabled.
Okay.
And that can have, yeah, sorry.
It's very interesting having this because, you know, OMCI flows push, this only happens when you provision something to the ONUs. So the first startup of the system and reboots, and there's no services defined yet. So how come an ONU goes to OMC push state? That's interesting. This is also should be the common for DT test, for example. How come it works in DT test and not in telecom test? That's really interesting.
DT tests are completely different. So if you look through the way how those pipelines are written, the DT tests are completely in a completely different style, and there is no or almost no common code usage. So it's like it's very independent if one fails or the other. There is certain parts that are like basically copy pasted and duplicated, but then somebody decided to, after copy pasting it, changing it on the one side and not changing it on the other side. But that has happened such a long time ago that it's very hard to see which of those things were fixes and which of those things were intentionally different between the two pipelines. So yeah, I don't know actually. So it's basically we need to go through the code path of the TT pipelines. And since this pipeline, as you said, might never have worked, we have no idea where to look or how long we need to go back to figure out. So the code might be wrong, or the ONU might be broken, or I don't know. Very hard to tell. Because we don't have a working example, right? For the DT parts, it was more or less like trying to figure out what about the configuration currently is wrong. For the TT one here, there is no working state that we can go back to. We are adding, or basically you are adding a bunch of new files. And then, yeah, there might also be issues with the way how those files are read or applied, or yeah.
Okay, the parts that I added are about the TCON, multiple TCON type tests should be at the end of the tests, but we're still at the beginning of the test. And okay, let me check the logs again, but
so if you want to go through the logs yourself, I would recommend not going on the graphical part here, but actually going for this. You can download all of the logs, and then you can like specifically look at all the commands that were run and all of the outputs that were given. It's a bit more complicated to go through that, but then you can actually see what happened there, because the output that you get on the console does not contain most of the things that you would need.
Yes, that's correct. So which one, when you download the logs, you get a
Yeah.
bunch of logs in there. Which logs you are checking for, this step-by-step tests running and their logs? I'm not talking about the logs of the components, but the logs of the, robot framework, or probably it's robot framework. Which, as you said, which commands are executed, what's the result of the command, etc. This kind of logs.
Yeah, exactly. So if you go to the this pipeline and then to the robot results, and basically if you download the full thing, then you have like one folder that says TT workflow, and within that folder there's another folder called functional tests, and in that functional tests folder there's the files that you would actually need to. There's one like output XML basically, and one log HTML. So the log HTML, if you open that, you get the detailed thing in a browser, and then you can open all of the different parts there. And yeah, so we initially also tried to compare this part to the DT workflow, but it's completely different, so you can't really map anything there. Yeah,
I was expecting these functional test parts would be same, because these tests are common tests, starting with restarting the OLTs and ONUs, then to give the service to the ONU, then remove the service, again reboot the OLT, ONU, sorry. Yeah. This kind of tests that are the functional tests should be common on both parts,
Yeah, I mean, it would be really cool if that would be the case. But I mean, even like just looking at the names of the tests, if you look at the DT pipeline and at the TT pipeline, you can already see that the names of the tests are different, and the code path of those things are completely. So yeah, I agree. It would be super cool if they would be the same, because then it would be easier to debug. But since they are different, we have to live with that for now.
Aren't these tests, that are running, this robot test, aren't these functional test parts, say, some common files, common robot files, utility files that are called with, DT workflow tests or TT workflow tests? I mean, I'm expecting this TT and DT workflow, tests, they only call the different property files, different studies files, etc., to push the system, but call the common functional test in a common directory.
That would be good, yeah.
And you say this is not the case.
No, not as far as I can tell. So, like, if you go through the different calls that the robot framework does there, as said, like sometimes you find certain parts that are common, but then you find other parts inserted in between that probably have been common at a certain part, but somebody copied and changed them. And then there's other parts that are only in one place called and not the other. There's also a difference in the syntax. So if you really go through the robot framework calls themselves, you see that like sometimes it's actually doing the same thing, but it's called in two different ways, because I guess somebody wrote the one code path earlier than the other and then used a different syntax and used different defaults or stuff like that. So it is relatively hard to compare, because yeah, very different styles there, and pretty different workflows.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. One quick side note, something I forgot to mention. We're looking into a problem right now with accounts and groups in Garrett. This shouldn't affect anything that's already set up, but we're using a batch mechanism to sync account data that's been added in Atlassian Crowd over to Garrett. So you basically have a form of single sign-on. Some of the something that mechanism doesn't seem to be working right now. So if we add new groups or users in Atlassian, they're not visible in Garrett. I'm looking into that right now. This would just affect new additions. I know we had problems with people not having code review access in the past. It's probably related to this, but it's just FYI. Let me see. So are there other, aside from the tests, are there other bugs that people want to go over, or should I open up the roadmap so can go over that? What would you like to do? And if anybody signed on late that added this item, if you could just clarify what we're covering with it.
I mean,
Mhm.
Joy, who added this roadmap to here, this item?
I'm not.
Should show up and, say
Yeah,
what he or she mentioned about that. I mean, what will you do going through the roadmap? It's the roadmap for the next releases. So what will by going through it?
do you want me to table this until next week, till somebody can add context for it, or?
Yeah, let's leave it to the next meeting or whenever the person that added this item showed up, then we can, go through it.
Okay. I guess, is there anything else anybody would like to cover? Okay, I guess with that, we can probably give you back, what is it, about 40 minutes then of the meeting time.
Well,
Unless some,
Hi, this is Tyler, and sorry, I just joined really late, and it seems like catching you right at the end. Anyway, sorry, I have like 3 conflicts in this time slot. But so later this week, Jan, we have BIN kind of talking about the lab related stuff in a breakout meeting. Is that right?
You're talking
Come
about
again?
There you
Thursday? You mean like the upcoming meeting, or?
go. Yes, I think it's Thursday.
You're very hard to understand. At least for me, you're breaking up.
yeah, you're
For
breaking up
me
a
the
little bit.
same.
Okay, I think my internet is providers having more problems in my area. Gee. So I just wanted to confirm that the meeting is set up and you're prepared for that. Can you hear me?
We're catching every other word. Maybe if you want to type it in the agenda.
So I mean, like I saw the meeting. I have to admit, like I'm not 100% sure what the expectation for the meeting is. I don't know. Like I think we had a couple of different rounds talking about the state of the community test bed. There's a pretty detailed description of the state of the software, hardware, and such things in the offer. And there was also the talk on the ONF summit in Istanbul. So apart from that, I'm not sure if I can really add anything else than that. Is the expectation that I like summarize that again, or?
I don't know, Mahir and Amit, you want to maybe
Yeah.
say a little bit something about what you're hoping to even look for? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jan, I think that would be a good thing, right? To summarize what you already had, right? And then we could look into, say, what are the current priorities that we are working with, and if those priorities should remain the same, or should we shuffle the priorities a little bit, right? Because in one of the calls, you remember, we did discuss about which are the first workflows we need to get into green and things like that, right? And yeah, so I think we can start with that. Those are the two things that I was thinking. And I think the other aspect of that meeting also was that this meeting is open to the area board as well. So maybe we get some ideas from there, right, regarding the testbed management, or if they have some expectations out there. So that could be a different angle, but at least the first 2 points that I said, at least that's what I was thinking of. Mahir, do you have any thoughts on this already? Okay,
So
I guess.
maybe then as a question, so like but everybody that will be in the meeting has had access to read the descriptions that like we already provided, or can I not assume that?
I would say I think it's a 30-minute meeting that we have proposed, right? Or is it 1 hour? Let me just check. I'm sorry.
Because like, I mean, I don't want to bore anybody
Yeah.
by like reading out the offer again, or reading out the presentation from the ONF meetup again. I mean, Joakim can also join, one of the guys that was at the meetup there. But I don't
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to bore people by repeating all the stuff that we already
So-
said. So
Yeah, what I could suggest is it's a 1 hour meeting. Either we take the first 5 to 10 minutes. If you want to summarize and repeat that could be one option. The other could be that you could just respond to that meeting invite, right, with the links to the material that you expect the audience to go through beforehand, and then we can directly get started. So I leave that decision to you, whether you want to summarize it in the first 5 or 10 minutes, or you want the audience to already come prepared.
So I can send the offer that we sent to the ONF to everybody participating in the meeting?
No. What I was saying was that the presentation that you did that you were talking about, right, as well as the other things that where we already have discussed the status.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not.
I would not
Okay,
suggest
I'm not 100% sure how to.
sending
Yeah.
around that offer, right? So maybe I think it would be worth just summarizing that in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the meeting.
Okay. Okay, I can see what I can do there. So I cannot like quickly repeat what we did in Istanbul. I can ask Jokin to summarize that again. I'll probably not have time until Thursday to prepare an additional presentation of like the offer again. I have a pretty full schedule this week, and on Thursday I'll also be on a conference. So I'll be joining the meeting, but it's all a bit like short, I would say, for me. Yeah, we'll try. I'll try to like be there, and I can answer some questions. But from the status side and what the next steps are, I think I don't know how this works within the ONF or the area board, or who's responsible for distributing information and how, but it would be good if everybody that is somehow involved in the decision gets access to, because it's a relatively extensive description in the offer, right? So it doesn't get much more detailed than what is in there. So if people want input on what the status is, I think we should allow them to read all the details that are written there. I mean, you can remove the numbers, but I would suggest to give people access to that, because otherwise it would be me sitting there reading those things, and I don't think that's very helpful.
So, Taman, are you still on the call? Okay, Taman, I don't see him. I would have asked his opinion on that.
You can send the document without numbers, as you said, to the list, I guess.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess we can, is there anything else anybody would like to cover on that? I'll ask Timon, we've got a recording of this, so I can ask Timon to see if he has any input on the last question permit. Okay, does anybody else have anything else? I'll say else one more time. Does anyone have anything else they want to cover? Okay. No, I guess that's a wrap for this week. We get it's about 11:30 right now, Eastern Standard. Thanks for joining.
Thanks all.
Yep.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks, Al.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yep. Bye.